But Alan, it's such a good point, though, in terms of the process of thinking about this person and her actions, her speech, because you're a social media guru, Alan, and this execution happened, quite frankly, very swiftly in no small part because of the brouhaha, especially, I think, on Twitter. And people calling for her head, I mean, especially, and including prominent black media personalities like Toure on MSNBC, Goldie Taylor, folks like that, whether they explicitly called for a resignation or not. These were the people that were bringing attention to it. Is there a trial process here in terms of ending someone's career essentially?
So let's look at a historical example. At Strom Thurmond's, I think, 100th birthday party, Trent Lott, who was at the time the Senate Majority Leader for the Republican Party, was
which is clearly, by the way, somewhat inferior to the position of a host on the Food Network.
Somewhat. But he made a comment. He said this country would be a much better place if Strom Thurmond had actually won the presidency when he ran as a Dixiecrat in 1948. What the mainstream press basically sort of glossed that over, and the blogosphere went crazy on this because they said, well, wait a minute, he was running on a segregationist platform in 1948. And so the idea, basically, Trent Lott was saying this country would have been better off if we were able to have implemented a segregationist policy with Strom Thurmond as president of the United States. As a result of the uproar from the blogosphere on that, the mainstream press then picked up the story, and Trent Lott ultimately had to resign as majority leader and ultimately didn't run for re-election and is no longer in the Senate. He was the most powerful Republican in the Congress at the time, I mean,
Trent Lott also made it worse. I mean, he gave apologies that were racially insensitive somehow.
Sure, but the point is that
that was an explicit statement that was recorded. I mean, there was no controversy. I mean, these are claims that are brought against her, and she's made some admissions about past actions. It seems a little bit less clear cut, and
Yeah, but I think the point I really want to make here is that it wasn't whether or not the transgression was bad; it was how the public reacted to it, and the public forced the media to pick up the story and created those implications, those consequences for Trent Lott. In this case, remember, she's not a member of Congress; she's a TV star, and the audience is everything. And so when Twitter erupts...
And the threshold is lower.
Right, but when Twitter erupts, even though the press hasn't been making a big deal of it, when Twitter erupts, that's the audience erupting. And that's something that Food Network has to be very attentive to. And so from a business perspective of a TV network, when you see a massive revolution on Twitter against one of your stars, that means your star's ability to be a star has been seriously damaged. And that is a fundamental issue with regard to her value to the Food Network. And if they believe that hurt her audience potential to the point where she was no longer worth the money they were paying her, well, then indeed the business decision is to let her go.
I think that's a valid point. Alan, there's been some, and I can bring I'll get back to you, Valentina, too, but there's been some discussion as to whether, I mean, there have been a lot of jokes on Twitter about this.
And I worry that
you could tell us a little bit about that. I mean,